This is a guitar channel, but when I share pieces of history on it, it's because I think the history needs to be recorded and I don't want it to be lost forever. We did the video on Hendrix in Nashville for the same reason, and while I said that story was undertold, this story is literally untold. For 5 years, I studied music with Maestro David Kyle, who trained a whole bunch of famous people up in the Seattle region, notably Layne Staley from Alice in Chains. Although I can drop the Seinfeld references with the best of them, you would never call him David Kyle or Mr. Kyle. He insisted on being called Maestro.
Wonderful.
I'm going to play for you not one, but 2 clips. All I ask is that if somehow this strikes a nerve or turns into an internet debate, please keep the comments respectful. Generally, I don't police the comments section, but because Maestro is gone now, I certainly don't want to log in here and see people saying all kinds of terrible things. I don't do drugs. I get very uncomfortable when drugs come out and leave the room. But we all know what was going on in Seattle around that time. Mother Love Bone, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, on and on and on. The reason for bringing it up on a guitar channel at all is it circles back to something that Mike McCready, the guitar player from Pearl Jam, has been saying for years. The story that I always heard about Mad Season was that Mike McCready had the story about when they were mixing 10 in England, the Pearl Jam record, that he was listening to Pink Floyd on a Walkman and went back to the studio and they said it must be the Mad Season, and that it was a reference to the season when the hallucinogenic mushrooms were in bloom. He says that he stashed the idea away in the back of his mind and didn't do anything with the name for 4 or 5 more years. What's interesting is that's not what Maestro told me that Layne told him. Maestro told me on not 1, but 2 different occasions that Layne got the name Mad Season directly out of an exercise in the Vakai practical method of Italian singing. I believe it was exercise number 5. And in the exercise, there's a lyric that says the Mad Season. Because I don't expect you to take my word for it, here's Maestro in 1999 saying so himself.
Ever heard of the rock group Alice in Chains?
Mm-hmm.
For a while, they changed their band for a short time, and they had a second band, and they called it Mad Season. You remember that at all?
No.
That's where we get rid of this exercise. Interesting, isn't it?
Here's Maestro saying the same thing yet again in the spring of 2000.
He was my pupil, you know that. And they had a time when they broke up for a short time, and he organized another band called Mad Season. He got the name right out of here. Gonna get a Valentine tomorrow?
I don't think so.
Or you send one to yourself? I get along wonderful with me, don't you? Get along pretty good with you?
Every time I've contemplated that and tried to reconcile it with the official story that has been told by Mike McCready, I've come up short. I've wondered if maybe Layne was just embarrassed and he didn't want to tell his elder and his teacher about any of his problems. But of course, history doesn't validate that because we know how open he was and all of those bands were. And I mean no disrespect or insensitivity when I put it this way. I couldn't wait to get away from Seattle, and I was completely into what I consider to be really great guitar players. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Chet Atkins, Albert King, and so on and so forth. But all those years later, when I went back and revisited the tapes, after having looked back on the Seattle bands much closer than I ever looked at the time, I found it really sad to hear him refer to Layne in the past tense.
Layne Staley. He used to sing with Alice in Chains.
I heard that Layne was his favorite student. Furthermore, Maestro wasn't stupid. And to think about it now, knowing that when he said that, Layne had retreated completely and was in that Seattle condo, I found it a bit eerie, touching, and sad in the same stroke to hear that on the tape. Did Layne just make that up as a compliment to Maestro? Or was he in some kind of denial? Which wouldn't have made sense with how open he was about his drug addiction, and wouldn't even make sense based on what we know with the band being an attempt for the members to stay off of heroin and get their lives back together. I don't know what the answer is, and I'm not telling you what the answer is, but that's the other side of the story that was never told. I'll see you in a little while with more guitar-related content. I'm doing this for you, and I'm giving the channel a shot for you. If it doesn't work out, my disappointment will be that I didn't get to share it with more people. I already know this stuff for myself, but I want to pass it along to you and to more people. So I hope that this channel is able to grow and that we can get more of an engaged community going on here. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again in a little while.